Coming up today, with deployment talks due soon, South Korea says the US missile defense system THAAD will be placed in the best location to take out incoming missiles from North Korea. South Korea says it has evidence North Korea siphoned off funds from the recently shuttered Kaesong industrial complex to help it pay for its nuclear and missile programs. Plus, up to 50 people have been killed following airstrikes on medical facilities and schools in Syria. It's believed the Russian-Syrian government coalition launched the attacks. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, February 16th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning. Top military officials from South Korea and the United States will meet this week for talks on deploying a sophisticated US-made anti-ballistic missile system to the Korean peninsula. The move to deploy the THAAD system comes as North Korea continues to launch large-scale provocations. Our Connie Kim has the latest on where in South Korea the missile battery might be located.
The U.S.'s military efficacy will be considered with priority when talks between South Korea and the U.S. start over the deployment of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System on South Korean soil. That's according to South Korea's Defense Ministry, which stated Monday that the two allies are working out the details of their THAAD talks.
U.S.'s criteria will be considered a priority when deploying the THAAD system on South Korean soil. This is because the U.S. forces in Korea will be operating the system. The optimal location to counter North Korea's ballistic missiles will be selected.
South Korean military officials say they're reviewing whether to dispatch the THAAD battery in a remote hilly region should they agree to bring the American-made anti-ballistic missile system. This is a measure to deter any concerns that the electromagnetic waves it gives off could affect people's health. It's also been revealed that officials are looking to set up 6 launch pads that'll be positioned at least 400 to 500 meters from the THAAD radar in a fan shape. People will be blocked from coming within 100 meters from the defense battery range by a radar safety fence. But there are other concerns. One is whether an expensive THAAD missile priced at some $9 billion is really needed to shoot down a North Korean missile that costs 1/10 of the price. Also, can the THAAD system effectively counter Pyongyang's broad range of ballistic missiles? North Korea is estimated to have around 2,000 in its arsenal, while in comparison, one THAAD battery is only capable of firing 48 missiles. Overcoming China's resistance is another issue, and it's likely to be discussed during vice ministerial talks between Seoul and Beijing on Tuesday. When the joint South Korea-U.S. working group convenes to work out the details of the THAAD deployment, the most contentious issues will be the optimal location and the cost each ally will have to shoulder. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, the floor leader of South Korea's ruling party has called for boosting nuclear armaments to counter threats from North Korea. What was once considered a fringe position is increasingly becoming more mainstream, particularly among conservatives here. Shin Se-min reports.
Making his first official address to the assembly, the ruling Saenuri Party's floor leader Won Yu-chol pressed the need for South Korea to arm itself with nuclear weapons. Speaking before the assembly, Won pointed a finger at North Korea for the security crisis on Korean peninsula, saying it is about time the South builds up a safety breakwater composed of peaceful security weapons. One added that Seoul should re-examine the issue or rearrange U.S. tactical nuclear weapons to boost the nation's self-defense systems.
We cannot borrow an umbrella from a neighbor every time it rains. We need to have a raincoat and wear it ourselves.
Referring to the nuclear umbrella Washington has provided since pulling its tactical nuclear weapons from the South back in 1991, one reiterated that denuclearization efforts should be considered meaningless now. Won's remarks are resonating with some conservative South Koreans who think the government should set up its own nuclear program in response to Pyongyang's continued provocations, the recent long-range missile launch, and a fourth nuclear test in January. Following the address to the assembly, the ruling camp chairman Kim Jong-un was adamant that Won's personal opinion did not reflect the party's stance on the issue of South Korea developing its own nuclear armament. Defense Minister Han Min-gu, too, ruled out the possibility. Speaking to the Parliamentary Defense Committee Monday, the minister said the government is not considering developing any nuclear weapons to combat North Korea's nuclear program. Floor leaders addressing the parliament isn't an unusual scene, but this time around more attention is being paid as it follows the recent provocations by the North, raising anticipation as to what the main opposition party's floor leader will address a day after President Park Geun-hye's speech to the parliament on Tuesday. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
South Korea says it has evidence showing how North Korea used money earned at the joint Kaesong industrial complex. According to some testimony, the actual wages paid to workers was just a fraction of what they were supposed to receive. Kwon So-ah with the details.
6,000 North Korean won, or a little less than $48. That's what North Korean workers at the joint Kaesong industrial complex earned, not for a day, but a month. This according to a North Korean defector Monday, who used to be a high-ranking official in the light industry sector. The 64-year-old said the regime took all of the around $80 South Korean companies would pay North Korean workers and distributed the equivalent of a bit more than 1 kilogram of rice. This latest testimony appears to be another piece of evidence supporting Seoul's recent announcement that North Korea has been using around 70% of its money from the currently shut down inter-Korean Kaesong industrial complex for their nuclear and missile programs. The Unification Ministry said Monday the government has been tracking and analyzing this through various channels. But so far, it has not chosen to elaborate further on the issue, which is stirring criticism from the media, public, as well as the political arena. In fact, at a National Assembly meeting Monday, Unification Minister Hong Yong-pyo had been harshly criticized by lawmakers for not disclosing proof of Pyongyang's money trail, citing security issues.
Do you have evidence or not?
We are assessing that through various channels.
You mean you have information on the evidence that 70% of the money goes into the Workers' Party of North Korea, but you have no further evidence? That's what you should make clear.
Minister Hong's vague answer is believed to be in part to the delicate issue at hand. The North's mishandling of the money would go against UN security resolutions, which the South would then have been hiding. Meanwhile, along with South Korea's suspension of the complex, the government is deliberating more independent sanctions on the North regarding ships coming in and out of North Korea. Seoul's Unification Ministry says, however, that this would only be considered after the UN Security Council's new resolution is adopted. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, the question of where foreign money goes when it hits the North Korean financial system is one experts have a tough time answering with any degree of real confidence. South Korea's unification minister claimed recently, as we just heard, that 70% of wages South Korea paid to North Korean workers at Kaesong went to pay for the regime's nuclear and missile programs. Now, it's hard to prove, but most agree that it is the regime, not the long-suffering North Korean people, that sees most of the incoming capital. Ji Myung-gil reports on one possible cash route.
It's believed that some 70% of the money that flows into the Kaesong industrial complex has been funneled to support the ruling Workers' Party of Korea. There are two organizations that handle this. If we take a look, one is Room 39, which is the code name for a highly secretive bureau that manages leader Kim Jong-un's personal coffers and slush funds. It's estimated to bring in anywhere between $500 million to $1 billion annually, and is linked to illegal activities like the production of counterfeit bills, international insurance fraud, and drugs. The other organization is the ruling Workers' Party Secretariat, headed by Kim Jong-un's younger sister, Kim Yo-jong. She runs both Room 39 and the Top Secretariat and is likely the only person trusted to do so. North Korean experts believe that covertly they're responsible for funding weapons developing and other projects that glorify Kim's regime. That also means buying extravagant gifts for Kim's ardent supporters. Choi Jong-un was a political officer for North Korean People's Army until he fled the regime in 2007.
Room 39 runs the regime's state coffers. All important budgets are allocated from there. It's obvious that money from Kaesong's controlled by this bureau and also funds the development of nukes and missiles.
Every month before payday, millions of dollars in cold hard cash would deliver by van from South Korea to the Uri Bank branch that was located in the industrial complex in the north. South Korean Kaesong firms would then withdraw the money from the bank and deliver it to the North Development Bureau, which oversees the complex. North Korea is a communist state that manages every aspect of their citizens' lives. Therefore, the regime would instead issue special checks for workers every month, possibly enough to cover everyday necessities.
North Korea is a communist state, so individual salaries must first be transferred to the state's bureau account. As workers' salaries have increased every year, the regime's profits have also definitely increased.
Since 2004, there have been 5% salary hikes every year for North Korean Kaesong workers. Until now, a total of $505 million are presumed to have been funneled into the regime's top office, with some $330 million of that used to fund nukes and missiles. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
The top UN official on North Korea human rights has asked the United Nations to notify North Korean leader Kim Jong-un that he may face an international investigation for alleged crimes against humanity. In a report to the UN Human Rights Council, Marzuki Darusman said the North's leadership should be put on notice about a pending investigation and told of the corresponding punishments if they are found guilty of the accusations, which include everything from murder, enslavement, torture, imprisonment and rape. Darusman said a small panel of experts should be appointed to find the best legal path to hold Pyongyang to account. He added that the human rights situation in North Korea does not appear to have improved at all over the past 2 years, despite the UN's best efforts. US President Barack Obama is due to kick off a two-day summit with 10 Southeast Asian leaders at a plush resort in California. The summit is seen as part of the Obama administration's efforts to rebalance US foreign policy toward the Asia-Pacific and to assert its leadership amid China's growing military and financial power in the region. The top agendas will include maritime security and South China Sea disputes, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Pact, the TPP, and North Korea's nuclear and missile provocations. Now, the US and China have yet to agree on how to respond to North Korea's nuclear test and long-range missile launch. Around 50 civilians have been killed in missile attacks on medical facilities, a school, and other locations in Syria. The United Nations says the attacks took place in Idlib in northern Syria and the town of Azaz near the Syria-Turkey border. Doctors Without Borders said 7 people died after a hospital supported by the charity was hit, and 8 members of staff have been reported missing. As you can see, there's lots of rubble. It blames Syria's government or Russia for that raid and the other attacks that hit a children's hospital, a school, and other locations. The United States has condemned the airstrikes. The State Department reiterated its call for all parties to end attacks against civilians and to allow humanitarian relief supplies to reach the people who need them. Cobra Gold. It's the largest multinational military exercise in Asia, and it's currently taking place in Thailand. Our Defence Ministry correspondent Kim Hyun-bin is there, and he filed this report.
Special Forces speedboats are rushing full speed toward the target island. Reconnaissance personnel from South Korea, the US, and Thailand are ready to take out anything that gets in their way. Their mission is to secure an enemy island. Once on land, they scramble into battle formation and move on to enemy territory to secure the premises. This is all part of the Cobra Gold exercise that is being held in the southern part of Thailand.
The Joint Recon Team goes through a number of intensive field training drills, including ways to survive in a tropical jungle.
The purpose of this training is to build camaraderie amongst the allied nations, to share standard operating procedures amongst the reconnaissance units. So far, we have covered basic patrolling, amphibious landings, and shooting.
South Korea is one of 27 nations taking part in the largest multinational military exercise in Asia.
Our Navy and Marine forces were able to test our combat readiness during the Cobra Gold exercise. We were also able to enhance our amphibious landing abilities.
The Cobra Gold exercise runs through February 19th. Kim Jong-un, ASEAN News, Rattawi, Thailand.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broom. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and thank you, as always, for watching. Goodbye.